Positive autonomous vehicle legislation at the federal level in the U.S., a couple of interesting tidbits out of the Energy Fair over the weekend, and 18650 cells could be sticking around for a while. Here is Tesla Tidbits episode number 254 for June 20th, 2017. Our lead story today comes from nextmobility.co with huge news on the autonomous vehicle front. Proposed legislation currently in the U.S. House of Representatives could remove the biggest roadblock to autonomous cars traveling on the country's roads, which is the fact that the states currently individually regulate them. If passed, the new law would delegate the regulation of autonomous vehicles to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, relieving the states of this duty and making any rulemaking on the topic a much easier and more centralized task. Part of the proposal as well would allow for the Department of Transportation to exempt up to 100,000 vehicles per year from vehicle safety rules, allowing for things like vehicles without pedals or cameras for side mirrors to be sold. Representative Bob Latta said that the goal was, quote, to continue working with all parties in a bipartisan manner as we refine language and move toward a consensus package, end quote. If you're unfamiliar with U.S. politics, this is U.S. political speak, basically saying we hope that political party fighting won't prevent the legislation from being passed simply because one party proposed the legislation and the other didn't. He continued saying it was, quote, an important step in establishing a framework to allow innovators to safely develop and test autonomous vehicles, end quote. It sounds as though it may have some legs, as even the Secretary of Transportation, Elaine Chao, said, quote, we don't want rules that impede future technological advances, end quote. This also has the support of the broader industry. Mitch Bainwall, head of the Alliance of Automobile Manufacturers, was quoted as saying that the legislation would eliminate state and local laws that, quote, unduly burden or restrict the use of self-driving vehicles in the future, end quote. With all this support, this seems super likely to make it through, but politics are a funny thing, so we'll keep an eye on this and assume nothing until it receives the president's signature. In the first of two stories out of J.B. Straubel's keynote at the Energy Fair in Wisconsin this past weekend, Electrek tells us that the Model 3 2170 cells have entered production at Gigafactory 1. While the 2170s have been in production for Tesla's Powerwall 2 and PowerPack 2 products since January, they use a different chemistry than the vehicle batteries do. JB confirmed in the keynote that the production lines were starting, quote, right now, end quote, for Model 3 cells, working to ramp up speed for full vehicle production. This dovetails nicely with a tweet from Elon regarding said 2170 cells. Elon answered a Twitter question asking when Model S and Model X would finally receive the cells, to which he replied, quote, no plans to change cell form factor for X and S, end quote. This is interesting as Elon has said for some time that Model 3 would not receive any new technology that Model S and Model X didn't already have, and yet here we are with the Model 3 with better, more efficient cells. This may have something to do with the contract with Panasonic for a certain number of 18650 cells that Tesla is required to purchase, but regardless, Elon responding to this question tells me that it will be some time before Model S and Model X see the better cells. Lastly tonight, in the other of the stories out of the Energy Fair, Electrek tells us that J.B. Straubel let out a significant tidbit regarding the Supercharger Network. For some time, it's been discussed whether Tesla would allow other manufacturers to access the network, and it's even been discussed publicly before. JB again reinforced this idea over the weekend, saying, quote, for things like Supercharger, we are actively talking to other car makers, and we are trying to figure out a structure to work with them, end quote. This would be a huge shot in the arm for the network as a whole. While it would indeed mean more cars using the existing network, along with this would come a revenue source allowing for the expansion of that network, alleviating any congestion it would cause. I'm of two minds on this one, as there are certainly two benefits to this, that of advancing EVs and the expansion of the network. But of course, there is still that ugly downside that fewer stalls will be available while the expansion is spun up. As a future owner, it's tough not to be a little selfish in that respect. You can find the links to today's full stories in the show description. This show operates on a value-for-value model. If you get some value out of what I do each day, please consider supporting me at patreon.com/Tesla Tidbits. Thanks to my newest super patron, Lee Sweet. They joined super patrons John Waltower, Drew Schuyler, John Waller, Mark and Sarah Thomas, and Ryan Scarborough in supporting the show at the $10 plus level. Of course, I know not everyone can give monetary support, and that's quite all right. Please show your love with positive feedback and subscriptions on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and other services across the internet. Also remember, if you're in the market for a Tesla, you can support the show through the show referral code, and you'll receive $1,000 off the car and supercharging for the life of the vehicle. DM me on Twitter, and I'll happily provide it to you. That's it for today. If you have feedback for me, the best way to be heard is to tweet at Tesla Tidbits. I'll see you all back here again tomorrow. Until then, keep it charged and hit the road.